Chapter 1. Meeting with the Unknown. The morning sun penetrated through the clear waters of the reef, throwing golden rays over the corals of all shapes and colors. Tropicals danced among the stone cracks, while the gentle waves swayed the marine vegetation. In the middle of this vibrant world lived Blue, a young dolphin with eyes big and full of curiosity. He had gathered around a wise old man, Nimbus, who was smoothing his dorsal, swimming with a mysterious air. He knew that Nimbus had been everywhere, beyond the safe limits of the reef, and that he hid secrets that only the bravest could discover. He approached curiously, trying to listen. It is said, the deep voice began, that beyond this reef, where the water becomes dark and the currents are strong, there is a mysterious world, a place where the sunlight penetrates hard, where strange creatures are hidden in the shadows, that there are submerged cities. Others talk about lost treasures and missing ships, but no one from here dared to go there and return to tell us what he saw. An unknown world? Hidden treasures? Mysterious creatures? It sounds exactly like the adventure he had always sought. He turned to his best coral friend, a slightly more cautious but loyal dolphin. What do you say, Coral? Don't you want to see with your eyes what's beyond the reef? Blue asked with a wide smile. Coral ripped off his caution. I don't know, Blue, if no one returned from there, maybe it's a good reason not to venture. But Blue could not be so easy. Gaining at the unknown aroused his imagination, and the desire to discover new things was stronger than fear. So in the evening, after the reef was quiet and the other dolphins were preparing for rest, Blue slowly headed for the edge of the reef, where the crystalline blue became a dark blue. Was the unknown. They stirred deep and took the first step outside the world-A. Knew immediately change. The currents were louder, the sounds more stifled, and the bottom of the ocean seemed to descend into abyss, without end. Everything, something was drawn before. It was a strange feeling, as if the ocean itself was cold. As it was. He observed how the marine creatures were changing. Huge jellyfish floated ghostly, and the marine plants became rarer and more twisted, like arms trying to catch it. All of the Blue continued their way, enchanted by the strange beauty of the place. Suddenly, you feel a change in the water. The cold current pushed him back slightly, and in the distance, something seemed to move in the dark. Blue held his breath. A huge silhouette was floating above him, almost invisible in the darkness of deep waters. Then from a corner of the gaze, he saw a pair of bright eyes fixing him. The heart was beating. Something was there, hidden in the dark. He did not know whether to run or stay. But before he could make a decision, the mysterious silhouette was moving. Moved slowly, as if he studied it. Blue gathers his courage. Who are you? He asked in a shy voice from the shadow. There was a deep sound, almost like a lost echo. Who are you, little? It was a gentle voice, but full of power. Blue proudly directed his swimmer. It are Blue, and I am looking for the unknown. The silhouette slightly, and the moon that pierced the water revealed the outlines of a huge whale, with a skin marked by deep wrinkles, signs of a long and full life. A curious dolphin, said the whale with a light smile. I still see such brave spirits, but you take care, Blue, because the unknown is not always friendly. Blue felt a mixture of fear and enthusiasm. Chapter 2. Preparations for travel. Blue woke up early, illuminated by the gentle rays of the sun that penetrated through the crystalline waves of the reef. The man had not been restful, his thoughts about his journey filling his mind with enthusiasm and anxiety. When he heard the legend about the mysterious world beyond the reef, he could also think of something else. He understood that he had to discover that world with his eyes, but for this, he needed serious preparations. Unknown advances needed caution, and Blue knew he could not leave without being prepared. He made courage and went to say goodbye to his family, his parents, Azure and Wave. They were two strong and loving dolphins. He told them about his plan. His mother's eyes were filled of tears. Blue, are you sure you want to leave? The world beyond the reef is dangerous. Maybe it's just a legend. It is not worth taking such a risk. The father, more detained, nodded. There are dangers that you cannot imagine. Blue looked at his parents with gratitude and spoke to them gently. I have always felt that the reef is only part of our world. I must see what is beyond. I have to discover with my eyes. And his father offered him a final advice. Try to follow your instinct, son. The instinct of a dolphin never mistakes. Blue was not alone. He had good friends who were with him at every moment. The closest friend of Finn, a smaller but extremely dolphin intelligent, was the first to ask him. You planned everything well? Do you have a route? Do you have energy supplies? You can't leave that way simply. Blue laughed. Finn was always the one who analyzed everything in detail. I know, Finn, that's why I need your help. Point one of their friends, Shelley, a large turtle loaded with wisdom, nodded seriously. The world beyond the reef is vast and unknown. You have to have healthy energy, to know where to find food and where to shelter. But above all, you have to take care of the predators. Yes, especially sharks. Finn completed. They are the masters of the deep waters. Blue remembered the advice and decided to prepare as best as possible to have energy during the trip. Blue had to eat well. Dolphins feed on small and calm, and Finn helped him find a bank of fresh fish. I assure you that you are well fed before you leave, Finn said, following how Blue caught the fish with incredible agility. After eating enough, Blue felt more energetic than ever. He was ready to leave, admired the bright corals, the multicolored fish that danced through the waters, and the rays of the sun penetrating through the surface of the ocean, creating spectacular light games. That moment, he felt a goal in the heart. He was ready to leave behind everything he loved, but at the same time, he was prepared for the unknown. Take care, Blue, Finn shouted. Don't forget about us, Shelley added. Blue smiled, turned to the horizon line, and with a last look at home, began to drown the adventure of his life. Chapter 3. The First Obstacle. Blue swimming with enthusiasm through the clear waters of the ocean, looking around with curious eyes, each water waving. Every reflection of the solar light that penetrated through the waves brought him a feeling of freedom that he had not experienced until then. He remembered the last words of his mother. Take care, Blue. The ocean is bigger than you can imagine, but your brave heart will always guide you. For a while, everything seemed to be well. Turn among the colored fish benches. He greets the sea stars and enjoyed the quiet water breeze, but at one point, he felt a sudden change in the water current. It was as if an unseen force began to shoot him in an unknown direction. You know how the power of water was increasing more and more, and the swimming became made difficult. He had begun to encounter resistance to every movement of the swimmers. Blue tried to keep his calm, but the current became more and more powerful. He realized that he had been caught in a marine current, a phenomenon he had heard, but which he had never lived. The shock that he should not fight directly against the current, but try to swim diagonally, so that it is easier to release. But the waves seemed to have other plans for him as he was warned for water. Blue noticed that the surrounding landscape was beginning to change. It did not recognize the coral formations, nor the fish that swam beside him. He had begun to move away from his native reef, the stories of his grandfather who always said, a true adventurer is not afraid of the unknown, but wisely confronts him. Inspired to those words, Blue analyzes his options. Maybe they knew how to get rid of this current. With his last forces, he approaches them and shouts, Sprinkle me. Can you help me? I was caught in this current and I don't know how to go out. An old turtle with an algae shell stopped and looked at him gently. You're a brave dolphin, she said. You don't have to resist the current, use it to your advantage. If you swim with him for a while, you will find a place to go out without exhausting. Blue listens to the wise advice of the turtle and, instead of fighting the current, began to swim in the same direction, but controlling his movements. After a few minutes that seemed for hours, he noticed how the current was beginning to lose weight. That time, using his last energy reserve, Blue swims sideways and finally managed to get out of the powerful current, stop for a moment, breathing deeply and feeling the freedom of his movements again. The old woman followed him from a distance and smiled. You have learned an important lesson today, young dolphin. You do not have to fight against the current. Sometimes, you have to use it in your favor. Thank you, turtle. I will never forget this advice. The turtle gave him a goodbye and continued his way, and Blue remained in the middle of the quiet waters, feeling more confident than ever. If he was away from home, he had just passed his first obstacle and had learned something valuable. He continued his journey, knowing that many challenges will follow, but with the certainty he was prepared for them. Chapter 4. Unexpected Friendship. Blue advanced cautiously through the unknown waters, feeling alone for the first time. The strong current had removed him from his native reef, and now everything seemed foreigner. The corals had forms he had never seen, the fish were colored differently, and the water had a smell slightly different. Although he was excited about his adventure, a small part of him felt fear. Plooting slowly, heard a short sound like a sigh. Her carapace was cracked at times, and her small wise eyes looked at him gently. Who are you, young traveler? Asked the tortoise, slowly raising his head. I am called Blue, the dolphin said, approaching cautiously. I started on a journey beyond the reef, but the current took me further than I had planned. Oh, the ocean always shows you his ways. Isn't it great? My name is Arlode. I crossed these waters more times than you can imagine. Then you can help me. I do not know these places well, and I do not know how to continue my journey. The wisdom of the ocean does not come only from the places you see, but also from the experiences you live. To travel means to learn, to adapt and accept the unknown.He first. The first thing you need to know is that the ocean is not a simple road. He is alive, always changing. If you want to continue your journey, you have to learn to read his signs. Sems. Arlo pointed his head toward a bench of silver fish that quickly swam in a certain direction. Do you see those fish? They feel the currents. If you follow them, you can discover safer ways through the water. Also, the changes of the color of the water, the movement of the algae or the sounds you hear can tell you a lot about what follows. To the ocean as in a story he could read. Usually, he just swam where he wanted. But now he understood that he could use these clues to help him. Thank you, Arlo. I will remember this advice. The old turtle laughed slightly. You are not in a hurry, young Svat is just the beginning. Practice makes the difference. Why don't you stay a little here and you don't try to read the ocean? Blue hesitates for a moment, but then accepts. He spent good hours by observing the fish benches, following the movement of water and trying to feel the currents. What time was passing, Blue began to see the ocean with other eyes. It was not just a vast and unknown place, but a space full of clues that could be understood. When the time was to leave, Blue felt a deep gratitude for Arlo. I will never forget what you taught me, I promise. Arlo nodded, smiling warmly. Then the ocean will be a good friend, safe, Blue. The dolphin continues its journey, but this time with a new confidence, the fact that each wave and every current had a story to tell, and he was ready to listen. Chapter 5. In the Footsteps of Legends. Blue swam calm down next to Arlo, following every movement of the old turtle. The sunbeams penetrated through the crystalline water, illuminating the blue scales of the young dolphin. Arlo sighed deeply, as if to share a well-kept secret. He stopped on a reef covered with algae and looked at the horizon. Have you ever heard of the lost town of corals? Arlo asked in a low, mysterious voice. Baloo blinked curiously. The lost. Sounds fantastic. What is it? The turtle smiled, glancing with wisdom. It is more than a story. It was a real place, a submerged fortress where the corals were growing in unmoved forms, and the creatures of the sea lived in peace and harmony. It is said that it was protected by an old spirit of the ocean, which kept away the dangers, but one day, the city was swallowed by water and no one has ever found it. Blue gave his tail several times, intrigued. No one? No one at all? I say they have seen the ruins, others I think it's just a legend, said Arlo, but I know one thing for sure, this place exists. And in its depths there is something precious. Dolphin is closer, his big and curious eyes reflecting the blue light of the ocean. Something precious? How do you mean? Arlo stretched his paws and drew in the fine sand, a strange symbol, similar to a bright sun. It is said that in the heart of the city, hidden among corals and cave, there is a gold coral, a legendary artifact that has the power to bring balance into the ocean. The golden body. And you think it's true? I do not know for sure, Arlo said, but the legends do not appear out of nothing. If you are determined to explore the ocean, to know that this could be your biggest adventure. Dolphin thought for a moment. Tempting, but he knew it couldn't be easy. How could I find it? Blue asked. This is the heavy part. No one knows exactly where he is, but I heard stories about 3 indications that lead to him. Blue feels a thrill of emotion. Those indications. The turtle nodded. The first indication is in a crystal cave, where the winds of the wind sing the stories of the past. The second is hidden among the dense algae forests, where the moonlight draws maps. And third, no one knows exactly, but it is said that only those with a pure heart can discover it. Blue gave the tail, impatient. This sounds incredible. Do you think I could find the lost city? Arlo looked at him seriously. You have courage, Blue, and a clean heart, but such a journey is not without danger. The dark water hides many unknowns. The dolphin thought of the strong currents, the unseen predators of the ocean, and how far he was, but something in him pushed him forward, a longing for the unknown that he had never felt. I must try, he said, determined. Then the first step is to find the crystal cave. It is said that it is south of the shadow reef, beyond the silver sand plains. Blue felt a wave of emotion. He had never been so far, but now it had a purpose. Thank you, Arlo. I'll be back with news about the city. The turtle shook his head with a wise smile. Be careful, little. The ocean is beautiful, but also dangerous. Where he had met Arlo, as far as he was swimming, his thoughts flew to what would discover the legends were true. If the lost city really existed, What would he find there? He didn't know the answers yet, but one thing was sure. His adventure had just begun. Chapter 6. Meeting with Shark. Blue swimmed with speed through the endless waters of the ocean, following the direction of Arlo around him. The sand on the bottom of the sea seemed to stretch like a silver canvas, and the sun's rays were reflected in the light waves above. It had not been never far from home, but every beat of the tail increased his enthusiasm. He was approaching an area where the reef became more and more rare, and the depths seemed to stretch like an unknown gap here, in this deserted place. The quiet it seemed strange. It was quiet suddenly. A cold chill was passing through the swimmers. He felt that he was not alone. A vague sound, like a whisper in the water, made him turn his eyes. But then, from the depths, 2 yellow eyes appeared, fixed on him. A shark. Blue felt his heart beat more. The huge crease was slowly approaching, with almost hypnotic movements. His gray was melted with dark waters, and his dorsal swimmer cut as a blade. "Well, what do we have here?" he said, the shark in a low, serious voice. A lonely dolphin, so far from home. Blue swallowed dry and tried to look calm. "I'm just passing," he said, trying to keep his voice firm. "Pass through my territory?" he asked, smiling slightly, which revealed his ranks of sharp teeth. "I don't think so." "My name is a razor," said the predator, narrowing his eyes, "and I don't like it when strangers walk through my waters without permission." "I didn't want to disturb anyone," Blue assures, trying to keep their calm. "I was looking for the crystal cave." Razor's eyes glittered for a moment. "The crystal peanut," he repeats. "Well, this is interesting. What does the job have such a small dolphin with such a mysterious place?" Blue hesitates. He wasn't sure if he had to tell the truth, if the shark knew more about the cave. But at the same time, if he lied to him, he could have upset him even harder. "I want to find the lost city of the corals," Blue admitted. "The lost? Huh. A story for the dreamy fish. There is no such thing." Blue frowns. "We exist. I heard stories about him. If I find the crystal cave, I can discover clues to take me there. You know, maybe you really believe in stories, little, but the ocean is not a place for dreams. It's a place for survivors." He was dangerous, that was clear, but something in his voice suggested that he knew more than he could see. "Have you ever been there?" Blue asked with courage. The raver remained silent for a moment, then turned his eyes. "I was in many places," he said. "I learned that beautiful things came with a price." Those words made Blue wonder if the shark had ever been looking for the city, but he had no time to continue his thoughts, because in a moment Razor suddenly turned to him, approaching himself threateningly. "But enough talk now. What to do with you?" Blue feels how adrenaline invades his body. If he did not go out quickly from this situation, he could become the prey of the shark. He thought quickly, what could he do? Then an idea came to him. "You know, Razor," he said slowly, "I heard that those who find the lost city are considered the masters of the ocean. But if you think it's just a legend, you are probably not interested." "The masters of the ocean?" Blue nodded. Yes, it is said that anyone who finds the city and the golden coral becomes the strongest in the sea." The roller narrows their eyes. "And do you think you could do that?" Blue shrugged, trying to look confident. "Maybe, but if you do not believe in him, you probably have no reason to be worried." "Humph, you have courage, Dolphin, but do not think you escaped. The ocean did not forgive the weak." And with those words, the razor turned and moved away, disappearing again in the shadows of the water, feeling his heart beating strongly. He had escaped, but at the same time, he had managed to get something precious. Razor believed more in the legend than he recognized. With a last sigh of relief, Blue continues his way. This adventure became more and more dangerous. Chapter 7. Dark Caves. Blue slowly swimming, leaving behind the endless stretch of the open ocean and approaching an area where the sea began to become injured. The huge stones rose like imposing walls, and the dark entrances of underwater caves were in front of him, some mouths that promised the unknown. In front of him there was a maze of underwater tunnels, whom old Arlo had told him to hide hundreds of years old out of the dark. Blue took a moment of breath and looked around, and slipped into the main cave. Inside the darkness immediately wrapped it. The stone breeds were covered by algae and fossilized coral, and sometimes a few small fish were running in front of it, scared of the presence of a stranger. Through the water, the reunifications were back, drawing in his mind a contour of the tunnel. He was in a narrow passage, but as he went, the cave became wider, like a huge room hidden underwater. At one point, something shined weakly in the wall. Blue approached curiously and observed some ancient inscriptions. They were deeply dug in and partially covered by sediments and algae. They approached more and studying them carefully. It was a symbol that resembled a spiral, followed by an arrow what seemed to indicate the depths. Those who seek the gold of the corals must follow the path where the light does not penetrate. Blue frown. What could that mean? Continuing its exploration, it swims deeper into the tunnel. As it was approaching a new opening, you felt a change in the water. A cold wind, like an invisible breath, seemed to come out of a dark hole in the rocky wall, continues its way and discovered another inscription, more detailed. This depicted a rudimentary map of the tunnels, and in the center was a drawing of a bright coral. In the heart of darkness, the treasures of the lost will light the way. Blue was trying to understand what this message meant when a strange sound caught his attention. Somewhere in the dark, something moved easy, as if something slid down the walls. Sometimes, two pairs of yellow eyes lit up in the dark. Blue was instinctively back from the shadow. Two gigantic fish came out, covered with black scales and sharp teeth. "Interest," said one of them in a low, hoarse voice. "What are you looking for here?" asked the other, swimming slowly around him. Blue tried to keep his calm. "I do not want trouble," he said. "I only have clues about the lost city of the corals." The people looked between them, then laughed briefly. "You go further," Little said first, "but you know that from these caves are not all back of something important." He was in a huge underwater room, where the ceiling seemed to disappear in the dark. Here, the walls were covered with layers of fossilized coral, and in the center of the room a large, smooth stone, different from the others, and he notices that the stone had a small opening in the middle. To key? A mechanism. Curious, he stretched his muzzle and gently blows water over her. Something moved. Under the layers of time, it became visible. T was the image of a huge, golden coral, surrounded by waves and unknown marine creatures. Above it, a symbol was engaged that Blue had never seen, a circle surrounded by small rays. As a star of the depths, Blue feels the emotion encompasses it. This was a hint. A sign that the lost city of corals was not just a myth. But before he could analyze better, a deafening noise sounded through tunnels, and fast. With his heart beating strongly, he used all his speed and swam to the exit, avoiding pieces of rock that collapsed around him. The tunnel became more and more narrow, but at the last moment, he found a crack in the wall and slipped out exactly when he slipped out exactly when he slipped out exactly when he slipped out exactly. A huge stone wall collapsed behind him. They said deeply, trying to recover. He had escaped, but more importantly, he had discovered a real hint about the lost city of the corals. With the heart full of emotion, Blue looked up to the horizon. He was going to continue the adventure, more determined than ever. Chapter 8. Test of Courage. Blue was floating in the middle of an underwater room bathed in the dark. The heart was beating quickly, still feeling the echo of the danger he had gone through. The tunnel he had crossed had collapsed behind him, blocking any way back now in front of him. The only one the way out was a narrow tunnel, so dark that not even his echolocation was able to outline him completely. He was afraid. The cold water of the water caressed his swimmers, and his thoughts were crammed into his mind. If I block me? If I run out of air? What if something dangerous is waiting for me in the tunnel? He remembered the stories he had heard about the explorers of the seas that ventured into unknown places and about some who never returned, but then he remembered something else. Don't give up now. He had to be brave, they said deeply, filling his lungs with air, and approved of the entrance of the tunnel. As he swam in the tunnel, Blue felt the space became more and more tight, fossilized and sharp rocky formations. He had to control his movements perfectly, not to hit and not lose precious time. When in time, thin currents of cold water made him tremble, and the outside sounds seemed to disappear completely. He could hear it was his own breath and heartbeat. He tried to use his echolocation to see how long the tunnel was, but the sounds were chaotic, making him not be able to figure out the road. Part of him wanted to return, but he had no place. He carefully, trying to keep his calm. One point. He felt a sudden movement in the water. He stopped instinctively. From the dark, something was slowly approaching. A small dark silhouette was moving on the walls. Blue held his breath. The creed showed his shape, a flashlight, with a bright globe that hung in front of him, pulsing in the dark. Blue sighed. It was not a danger, but the meeting was giving him a few seconds, then swim further, leaving behind small bright particles. The Dolphin thought about how beautiful, but also dangerous the world of the depths. But he had no time to admire the landscape. The tunnel seemed to become even narrower. The critical moment, while advanced, Blue felt the walls of the tunnel slightly touches his skin. There was no room to swim freely. He had to slip carefully, moving slowly to hurt carefully, but at the moment part of the fossilized coral collapsed suddenly next to him, lifting a cloud of dust. Baloo frightened and made a sudden movement. You feel a sharp pain at the right swimming. He had hit a sharp corner of the stone. The pain was bearable, but the danger was another. The cloud of high stone dust began to fill the tunnel, completely reducing its visibility. Baloo began to feel his breath. He was caught in a tight space in the dark, without seeing where he went, exactly the kind of situation that was most afraid of. But he had to keep his calm. He remembered Arlo's advice. When you are in a difficult situation, stop. Don't let the panic control you. Launches a sound signal and listens carefully to the echo. This time he managed to detect a greater opening in front, a few meters. He concentrated all his will and swim before, carefully slipping through the stones. With each meter the light began to become more visible. After a few moments that seemed to him an eternity, he suddenly felt a different current. The tunnel was widening. Baloo realized that he was reaching outside the tunnel, in a larger cave, where the weak light of the ocean managed to penetrate. They stirred deeply, leaving himself enveloped in the feeling of freedom. Fears, with doubt and panic. Now, he felt that he was stronger around. Baloo noticed that the cave had a direct exit to the ocean. He was just beginning. Chapter 9. Unexpected Help. Baloo was floating quietly in the light lighted by the sun's filtered rays. He had been from the narrow tunnel, but it was not completely safe. It was in an unknown place, and the route to the ocean was not clear. They were slowly rotating, researching the surroundings. How do I get out of here? Baloo was asked. His disgust was not discovered any obvious output. The cave was closed from all sides. He had started to feel a slight fear again. If he was stuck here? He slowly headed to the walls of the cave, looking for a hidden passage. But everything seemed solid. Just when he was beginning to feel despair, a small bright point in the darkness caught his attention. A small translucent fish, with a bright globe on his forehead and warm, like stars. Baloo looked at him with astonishment. Dolphin looked at them fascinated. He had never seen such creatures so close. He understood the message. They guided him to the exit. He slowly after them. Following their hypnotic dance, the people seemed to know exactly where to go, avoiding any obstacle to T. The beginning, Baloo hesitated. He had never met such creatures and did not know if he could trust them. But then he remembered the lessons learned in his journey. Sometimes, the help comes from the most unexpected places. So he left his fear aside and allowed himself to be guided of the cave where, at first glance, there was no exit. But as he approached, Baloo observes a narrow crack between the rocks, hidden in the shadow. You can swim directly through it, illuminating the way. Baloo approaches the opening and he inspired deep. If I block me, what if it's the wrong road? He thought for a moment, but then he looked at the fish bench, waiting for him beyond the crack, pulsing slightly in golden light. They were not scared. Soon, the space began to widen. Then suddenly, he woke up in a magnificent underwater tunnel, where the walls were covered with phosphorescent corals, and the water was clear and lively. The fish stopped for a moment, as if he wanted to make sure that Baloo sees the exit. The dolphin thanked them. Then, with a last pulse of light, the fish dispersed, turning into their fish. Then the ocean. Baloo swims with power to the light. A few seconds later, went out into a lagoon bathed in the sun, where the crystalline water caressed his skin and where he could breathe again the fresh air of the sea. You feel a deep gratitude. Without the help of the light fish, maybe it would never have found the exit. This experience had shown him an important thing. You are never alone, even in the darkest places. With a new wave, Baloo he turned his eyes off. Chapter 10. Hurricane. Baloo swam quietly through the clear waters of the ocean, admiring the dance of the sunshine that pierced the surface of the water. After the attempts he had gone through, the dark tunnel, the meeting with the fish and all the previous obstacles, he felt for the first time a deep silence. But this peace did not it would last. Suddenly, he felt a change in the water. Unnatural coolness encompassed him, and the surrounding currents began to shake. Baloo looked up to the surface and observed something worrying. The black clouds covered the sky, and the sunlight seemed to gradually disappear. You feel an increasing anxiety in the chest. Then a troubled fish passed by it, swimming frantically in the opposite direction. Run! A storm comes! Cries the fish without stopping. Baloo tensed. A storm? He had never been trapped in such a powerful, but he had heard stories about the ocean whisper, destroying everything in their path. If this was one of those storms, he had to find a shelter, and quickly. The waves in the distance became bigger, and the currents pushed his body in an unwanted direction. The water seemed to have caught life, moving in a chaotic, uncontrolled way. Baloo began to swim against the current, trying to approach a reef where he hoped to find a safe place, but the strong wind above had already lifted huge wave, and the whole sea had become a dangerous place. People and other marine creatures were running in all directions, Looking for shelter more overwhelming, he had to find a place to hide before it was too late. Swimming with all the power, Blue remembered a place that Arlo had described, the wise turtle. If you will ever be caught by a storm, look for shelter in coral reefs. There the waves do not have the same force, and the currents are weaker. The reefs. This was his only chance. Trying to ignore the strength of the wind that felt even in the water, Blue advanced to a chain of reefs a few miles away. But as the storm was approaching, the waves became higher and taller, lifting it and throwing it strongly. For the first time on its journey, he felt a real fear, the glow lighting the dark sky, sending ghost reflections in the water. The tunnels rang so hard that they seemed to shake the whole ocean, and Blue had to be extremely careful not to get caught in them. That a huge wave came from behind, and before he could react, the water force pushed him down to rolled, losing his orientation around him. Around him the water had become a mixture of sand and white foam, and he did not know in what direction the surface was and in what direction the bottom of the ocean was. Don't panic, he thought. Breathe. Find a landmark. He used his echolocation and managed to detect the form of the reefs not far from him. He was desperately to them, while the waves continued to push him louder. Inside the reef, the waters were still agitated, but at least they did not pull it in all directions. They settled near a wall of corals and regained their breath. He had to shelter. But the storm was far from over. They continued to hit the reef, and the sounds of the thunder rang like frightening bubbles. Ledges and coral fragments were torn by powerful currents, and Blue could feel the whole of the sea around him. Other marine creatures were hiding in the cracks of the reef. A bench of colorful fish had been hidden under a coral arc, and an octopus stuck to a stone, trying not to be snatched. The ocean, his house, could be gentle and scary. The time seemed to have stopped in place. Blue didn't know how long, maybe minutes, maybe dot of violence, and the lightning became more and more rare. Finally, the sky began to light again. Blue looked up and saw the first rays of the clouds. He had disappeared. Blue left his shelter and carefully swam through the reefs. Many of the corals had been destroyed, and the sand on the bottom of the sea was disturbed. But the life of the ocean was already beginning to move again. A bench of brave fish had left their hiding. Turtle slowly swims next to him, looking at the clear sky above. The ocean had survived the storm. Chapter 11. The Secret Island. When the ocean calmed down after the devastating storm, Blue felt he had to continue his journey. He still felt his tired muscles because of the struggle with strong waves, but he was grateful he had survived again in the sky and the water. Although cloudy, he was beginning to regain his silence. While swimming further, he felt a gentle girlfriend in the water, a different current, which urged him to follow her. Without being too thinking, Blue used his instincts and began to move to the unknown. After a few hours of swimming, a mysterious island was outlined. Although Blue had seen many reefs and rocky formations on his journey, this place was different. It was surrounded by blue and clear waters, and on the bottom of the sea were seen corals in vibrant colors. As it was approaching, it saw silhouettes that moved agile through the water. Dolphin. But they were not like the people of his native reef. Blue slows the movements and approaches with caution. A group of elegant and larger dolphins than he swam in circles, communicating through melodious sounds. They were on guard, and one of them, one gray-silver dolphin with penetrating eyes, swam to meet him. "Who are you and what are you looking for on our island?" asked the foreign dolphin with a firm tone. Baloo felt a thrill of restlessness, but he gathers his courage. "I call me Blue. I was caught in a storm and, following the currents, I arrived here. I didn't know there was such a beautiful island and a colony of unknown dolphins." The surrounding dolphins slammed each other, analyzing it with curious eyes. "We are the lunar dolphins. This insulating is our house for generations, and no one from outside has arrived here." Other members of the colony. Blue notices that they were all bigger and faster than ordinary dolphins. They had slightly silver skin, and during the night they said that their skin was glowing weakly under the moonlight, a rarely encountered phenomenon. Older dolphin with scars on the sides swim toward him. "I am Elder Cairo, the leader of this colony. You found it by chance, but maybe the ocean wanted our roads to intersect. Tell me, Blue, where do you come from and what is the purpose of your trip?" Blue told them all about his native reef, about his desire to explore the unknown, and about the legend of the lost city of the corals he had told. "The lost coral," Elder Cairo murmured. "This is an old legend, but it is said that some indications about his existence could be hidden near our island." "Serious? Have you heard of him too?" "Of course, but few are the ones who had the courage to look for him. There are great dangers, and many who started on this trip did not return." This was not the first time Blue heard about the risks of searching for this legendary city, But this time you felt a weight in the words of the old dolphin. After the discussion with Elder Cairo, Blue was invited to explore the island. It was an amazing play. The reefs around the island were the most beautiful he had ever seen, full of phosphorescent corals. Fish, exotic and hidden caves. A group of young dolphins in the colony guided him through the hidden lagoons and showed him something truly fascinating. Old inscriptions on underwater rocks, which seemed to tell a story. Yes, are written old legends about the ocean. It is said that in the past, our dolphins protected a great treasure, but it was lost in the depths. No one knows where they are really. Blue looked fascinating. The symbols engraved in stone, they seemed familiar to them, similar to the ones he had seen in the dark fish. Did this colony hide an important indication about the location of the corals lost? Before the sunset, Elder Cairo calls Blue again. In order to be considered a friend of monthly dolphins, you must prove that you are worthy of our confidence. How can I do that? Blue asked, feeling a challenge. No, lunar dolphins, we are known for our speed and agility. We want to see if you have the courage to compete in a swimming test with one of our best swimmers, big and more quick than him. But he could not refuse this chance. I accept the challenge, he said, determined. Thus, in the light of the west, Blue was preparing for the most important race in his life. If he managed to gain the respect of the monthly dolphins, he can discover a new secret about the legend of the corals. Chapter 12. The Ancient Secrets. Blue had managed to earn the respect of monthly dolphins after accepting their challenge. It had not been easy, but his courage and determination helped improve his value. Now, surrounded by his new friends, he was preparing to find out one of the best-kept secrets of the ocean. After the acceptance ceremony, Elder Cairo led him into an underwater cave between the rocks of the island. The teaching was narrow and dark, but once they entered, an amazing show was revealed to Blue. The ropes were covered with ancient inscriptions, glittering weakly in the thunder of water. In the middle of the room, a coral statue appeared, a dolphin with wings engraved with unknown symbols. This is one of the most sacred places of monthly dolphins, said Elder Cairo. Here the secrets of the ocean, transmitted from generation to generation, slowly swim around the room, admiring the mysterious beauty of the cave. What does these inscriptions mean? He asked, fascinated. Old Dolphin, who seemed to be the history of the colony, approached and began to explain. These symbols speak of a magic artifact, known as the Pearl of Time. He has said that this artifact protects the ocean and its natural balance. A magic artifact? Elder Cairo nodded. Legend has it that this pearl was created by the ocean thousands of years ago, to maintain the harmony between its creatures. He wanted to use it for selfish purposes. When are he now? Blue asked eagerly. The old woman sighed. We do not know exactly, but it is believed that the clues to find the Pearl of Time are hidden in the lost city of the corals. Blue feels how the heart beats faster now. He discovered that that place was hiding an even greater secret, a magic artifact that could protect the entire ocean. If this artifact is so important, why has it not found it so far? Blue asked. Elder Cairo looked at him seriously. Many creatures have sought it over time, but the road is full of dangers. He has said that only a brave and pure soul can find the way to the Pearl of Time. Discover this legendary artifact? After leaving the sacred cave, Blue and Elder Cairo withdrew at sea, looking at the moon reflected on the surface of the water. What will you do now, Blue? Asked the old dolphin. Blue had no doubt. I will continue the journey. If the Pearl of Time is in the lost city of the corals, I have to find it, not only for me, but for the whole ocean. Elder Cairo smiled approvingly. You have a brave soul, my young friend. But you know that you will need more than courage. He needed wisdom, patience, and trust allies. Blue nodded. I will find these allies. Before you leave, there is something else you have to see. Elder Cairo led him to another part of the island, where a huge golden coral was growing at the bottom of the sea. It is said that this coral was once touched by the magic of the Pearl of Time. Those who touch it can feel connected with the ocean and can find out if they are meant to follow the path to artifact of the coral. A wave of heat crossed it and, for a fraction of a second, had a vision, a submerged coral fortress, a dazzling light and a threatening shadow that was approaching. When the vision ended, Blue remained still, breathing deep. Elder Cairo looked at him carefully. You saw something, didn't you? Blue nodded slowly. Yes. I think I saw the lost city of the corals. Elder Cairo closed his eyes for a moment, then spoke in a serious voice. Then your destiny is clear. You have to go to that place. But you take care, because where there are treasures, there are dangers. Blue looks up to the starry sky. Chapter 13. The Road to A.B. Eyes. Blue swam through the clear waters, leaving the secret island with an undeniable determination. His reason was clear: to find the Pearl of Time, but to reach the lost city of the corals, he had to go through unknown places, to the oceanic abyss, a place that few had visited and from where fewer had returned. It was a mysterious territory, where the sunlight did not penetrate, and strange creatures made its way through the shadows. As it went down, Blue felt the water temperature. It gradually decreased. The living chickens of the reef remained behind, replaced by darker tones of blue and black. Around him, the ocean became silent, and the only sounds were the beats of his wings and a few distant echoes of other marine creatures. Did I make the right choice? Blue thought, but immediately chasing his doubts, he had to continue, no matter what to discover. After a few hours of swimming, Blue met a strange phenomenon. The black smokers, as Arlo once told them, were hydrothermal mouths that released gases from the depths. Baloo approached carefully, feeling the increasing water. From one of the cracks, a huge fish, covered with silver scales and sharp teeth. He looked at him for a moment, then disappeared in the dark. Now no one is friendly, Blue thought. Continuing his way, after leaving his fumarole, Blue felt a strong current, which attracted him to an underwater tunnel in the depths. Little lanefish, who swam near, looked at him scared. Run! Before they pull you too. Blue shone with all the strength, but the current became more and more powerful. He was caught in what the elders called the wind of the abyss, a force that was pulling everything in the ocean's depths. Despite his efforts, Blue was pulled into the whirlwind, and he felt the darkness swallowing it. Blue felt without control. He was chaotic, trying to find a support point, but it was as if he had fallen into the empty. Strange creature, with big eyes and huge teeth, floated through the darkness. Attracted by his movements, Blue knew that the abyss was dangerous, but he had not imagined he would be so hostile. When he thought everything was lost, Blue noticed a dim light, but constant, in the distance. It turned to her, following the instinct. He was closer. He discovers that the light came from a huge cave, with walls covered by bright coral. Blue sighed relieved. He stated by the wind of the abyss. In front of him stretched something incredible, the ruins of an ancient city, covered by marine vegetation and phosphorescent corals. He felt that he had discovered something important, but he still didn't know what dangers they were waiting for. While swimming among the ruins, Blue noticed a strange inscription on a stone wall. Before he could understand something, a huge shadow slipped behind him. He was not alone in the abyss. Chapter 14. The Monster in the Depths. Still disturbed by the steep descent into the abyss, Blue held his breath when he felt the huge shadow approaching. The heart was beating his chest. He was turning, preparing for any danger. A colossal shape floated among the ruins of the sunken city. It raised as a monster of legends, a long muscular body, huge tentacles that were slowly, and a huge mouth, full of sharp teeth, make no movement. If the monster saw he had no chance to escape, but the creature did not seem to have observed it. Slowly through the water, gently touching the ruins with his long tentacles, as if he were looking for something, Blue felt a strange sensation of sadness coming from the creature. It did not seem angry or aggressive, rather it seemed alone. The curiosity was stronger than fear, so Blue was moving slightly before, approaching a little, when he made this gesture. One of the tentacles, and the big eyes of the creature fastened on it. Blue froze. But instead of attacking, the monster blinked slowly and made a deep, guttural sound. A sound that does not express anger, but wonder. You are not like the others, said the creature suddenly, in a low but gentle voice. Who are you? The dolphin asked, with an uncertain voice. The creed waved his tentacles and approaches slightly, without seeming threatening. I am Nox, and who are you, the little stranger? Blue gathers his courage, and swims a little closer. I call me Blue, I have the Pearl of Time. I arrived here by mistake, drawn by currents. And you are a seeker of legends, like the others. What do you mean? What happened to others? Nox closed his eyes for a moment, as if overwhelmed with memories. Long ago, a group of explorers came to this place. They were something important, but they were thirsty for power. They tried to take treasures that did not belong to them. The ocean was not gentle with them, and the shadows swallowed them. Since then, no one left here. Blue felt a cold thrill. And you? How did you get here? Me. Nox sighed. I didn't choose to be here. I was left behind. Blue realized that Nox wasn't a monster. It was just a single creature, forgotten by the world. You were abandoned? Blue asked, sad. Yes. Long ago, those like me were afraid of other creatures. They said we were dangerous, though they drove me in the depths. Since then, I stayed here. Blue realized that, although it was small and vulnerable in comparison with Nox, They had something in common, the desire to belong to a place. I don't think you're dangerous, Nox, just that no one really knew you. Nox looked at him surprised. You are the first to tell me this. Blue now swims relaxed near Nox. He had begun to see the creature not as a monster, but as a possible ally. Maybe you can help me, Nox. Kate, the Pearl of Time. It is said that it is in the lost city of the corals. The hearing of these words, NX's eyes narrowed slightly. The time of time. I heard about it, but she is guarded by something more frightening than me. What do you mean? The shafts of the depths, they protect the treasure, and they will not let anyone take it easily. Dolphin felt a mixture of fear and enthusiasm. His adventure was just beginning. But now he had an unexpected ally, a colossus of the depths, a monster, which was not what seemed to be. Will you help me? Blue asked, hopefully in the voice. Nox remained silent for a moment, in a determined voice said, yes. But we have to be prepared. Chapter 15. Facing the Pearl's Thieves. Blue swam next to Nox, the colossus of the depths, following the route marked by the ancient corals. You, whispered Blue, Nox slowly waving his tentacles, tasting the water with his fine senses. Yes, we are not alone. Dolphin swallowed. In the century since he had been looking for the Pearl of Time, he had learned that this treasure was coveted by many creatures of the ocean, but who would dare to penetrate so deep? Suddenly an ink cloud darkens the water. Blue was instinctively tugs back, but it was already surrounded. Huge octopuses appeared in the shadows. They had small, wicked eyes, and their suction cups seemed full of scars. Their leader, a reddish octopus with a missing eye, undertakes its tentacles with arrogance. What do we have here? He growled. A dolphin and a monster. I heard that you hunt the Pearl of Time, but we have bad news for you. The pearl belongs to us. Thurla does not belong to anyone. Protect the ocean. The boss laughed thickly. Exact, and if we have it, we can control who lives and who perishes. The other cucumbers chuckled and twisted their threatening tentacles. We will not let you take it. Blue said, trying to look brave. Nox was moving forward, and his colossal presence made the water tremble. They now and you will not suffer. But the pearl thieves did not seem impressed. Their leader whispered. 2. Blue was away at the last moment, avoiding the tentacles that rushed toward him. Nox opened his arms and hit hard, causing 2 octopuses to roll into the water. But the thieves were agile and experienced. Blue quickly realized that the direct fight was not the best strategy. Caracrats could change their color and disappear in the environment, attacking the shadow. He had to think quickly. He remembered the reefs with narrow caves he had seen. Nox, follow me. Shout Blue. Dolphin swims quickly to massive corals, slipping among tight openings. As he hoped, the octopus followed. Blue knew an old trick of dolphins. He could create high-frequency sounds. Area full of rocks and crammed corals began to make clicks and intense sounds. The characters were shaking. He used his colossal force. He pushed a massive rock, blocking the exit of the pearls. The characters struggled, but they had nowhere to run. You got it, Dolphin. But don't think I'm done with you. Blue swam in front of them with a confident smile. This as a lesson, the ocean does not belong to the greedy. He could finally go out, Nox said. But they will have time to think about their mistakes. Blue and NX left the area, heading for the sinking city. You were brave, Nox said. You thought quickly. You did what many would not have succeeded. Blue smiled. But he knew that the challenges had not ended here. In front of them, the Pearl of Time was waiting for them. But other unknown dangers. Chapter 16. Blue and the Pearl of Time. Blue was floating in the middle of the quiet waters, looking with emotion to the ancient cave in front of him. After the exhausting confrontation with the pearl thieves, the 5 cunning octopuses that used the black ink to hide, the little dolphin felt the fatigue pressing his swimmers. That he was so close to the Pearl of Time gave him power. This pearl, about which the old dolphins were talking with reverence, was a legendary artifact, capable of maintaining the balance of the ocean and connecting the past with the future. The Pearl of Time seemed to be detached from another world. The entry was covered by long curtains of phosphorescent algae, which were slowly waving in the gentle current, creating a hypnotic effect. On the inside, the walls were decorated with ancient inscriptions, carefully carved by the generations of dolphins who had kept the secrets of the ocean. Engravings were talking about a forgotten era, about mythical creatures and the protection that the Pearl of Time offered the oceans. Blue advanced with caution, still feeling in the water the traces of the ink scattered by the malicious octopus. These creatures had tried to steal the pearl for their own goals, but the little dolphin he had managed to face them and drive them away. Now, in front of him was an underwater cathedral, a wide room with coral columns and marine stone stalactite, which shone weakly in the light filtered by the deep waters. In the middle of the room, on a pedestal covered with bright corals, was the Pearl of Time. This was a perfect sphere bigger than any pearl ever seen, emanating a gentle silver aura. As a blue was approaching, the pearl seemed to pulsate slightly, as if he had his own life. Her warm lumina filled the whole cave, causing the inscriptions on the walls to look live. Blue felt her heart beating with power. She had understood that this pearl could not be taken by anyone. They had tried, but only those with a clean heart could raise without the magic of the place breaking down. He remembered the wise lessons of the old dolphins, who had told him that the Pearl of Time was not only a relic, but a symbol of the harmony of the ocean. That moment, a gentle light was enveloping him, and a wave of sensations overwhelmed him. For a few seconds, he felt he was connected to the whole ocean. Imagery of the past and future were lighting through his mind. Vast and endless sea creatures that had once ruled on the waters, the future of his reef and the marine world. Then everything calmed down. Blue raises the pearl, and to his surprise, the cave did not collapse as he feared. Hidden road, carved by waters in the walls of the cave. It seemed that the Pearl of Time had recognized his pure intentions and opened his path. The dolphin was a wave of emotion growing in it. He was aware of his responsibility now, a magic object, but a symbol of wisdom and protection. The old dolphin had explained that the power of this pearl should not be used for selfish purposes, but to maintain the balance of the ocean. With a decision, exit the cave, with the pearl shining slightly at his neck. For his neck, that the brilliant pearl was linked to a bright blue pulsing marine plant. The surrounding peppers seemed to light up as it was, as if the ocean itself recognized the importance of its mission. Blue had to reach the old dolphins to fully understand the power, which he now wore around his neck. As he approached the secret reef where the old dolphins lived, his thoughts were full of questions. What would he learn about the pearl? How could he use it to protect the ocean? He knew this adventure was not the end, but just the beginning of a bigger trip. Chapter 17. The Teaching of the Elderly. Blue swimmed with an impatient heart to the secret island, carrying both the victory over the thieves and the weight of the new artifact. Dolphins of the colony were waiting for him in silence. They had settled in a perfect circle, like the waves that spread in a quiet Essayade, and the middle of them, the wisest of them, Elder Solis, looked at him with deep and gentle eyes. You managed to bring the artifact, but do you know what that means, Blue? The young dolphin felt that all eyes were pointing to him. I know it is a powerful object, but I do not understand how I can use it. Elder Solis nodded. Then it's time to learn. Baloo was driven in a large cave, surrounded by ancient drawings in the walls. These showed scenes with dolphins, sharks, oceans and other creatures, but they all seemed to a glittering light. Without doubt the pearl. Now thousands of years, the ocean was a chaos. Elder Solis began. The currencies collapsed in each other, the reefs disappeared under the waves, and the creatures of the sea lived in fear. Blue listened, fascinated, watching the drawings. Then the first guardians of the waters found this pearl, a gift from the depths. It was a relic that could harmonize the waves and control the currents, but only if it was used wisely. Cho the throat. So does that control the ocean? Solis smiled, but he had a serious look. No, Blue not controls the ocean. To listens and balances it to prove his power. The elders led Blue at sea, to a place where the currents collided, forming dangerous whirlwinds. This is your first test, Solis said. He learns to feel the ocean, not force him. Blue looked down. The water was chaotic, and the thought of entering there made his heart beat faster. Do I have to swim there? Yes. And tried to feel her vibrations. At first, nothing changes, but then very slowly, something from the depths seemed to whisper, a rhythmic pulsation with him. Slowly, he adjusted his swimming. Instead of fighting the current, he was carried for a moment, listening to the vibrations of the water, and then with a small pulp, he sent a light wave through the pearl. The old people were watching remotely and nodded. Blue came to the surface, breathing hard, but with eyes shining with emotion. I succeed. Solis approves with a smile. It is just the beginning, Blue, but you took the first step to understand the true power of the Pearl of Time. Chapter 18. Return home. Blue swam speed to his native reef, excited. After so many adventures, after so many lessons learned, he was finally returning home. He missed his family. His friends who had seen him on his full journey to the ocean was playing through the waves, and the sun's rays penetrated deeply, illuminating the multicolored corals. Everything seemed the same as the day he had left, but as he approached, you felt something. They were moving, agitated, and the reef, once lively, seemed immersed in an unnatural silence. Fishermen hidden among the corals and looked carefully. In the water, huge nets were thrown, and the fish benches were desperately struggling in an attempt to escape. The one of his dolphins were trying to release the caught life, but they were powerless in the face of danger. Dimension Blue felt like a cold rage encompasses him. The people did not understand that the reef was their house. With a tight heart, they continued their way to the cave where he had grown. His mother Aja was there, along with other dolphins from the reef. She saw her eyes filled with tears of joy. Blue, you've come back. He rubs his muzzle of hers with affection. Mom, what's going on? The people came a few days ago. They are in place everywhere and destroy the corals with their anchors. It is not long until our reef is completely destroyed. Blue looks around. All the creatures seemed scared, the octopuses, even the small shrimp who used to tickle him on the tail. Everyone was hiding from the terror of the nets. He knew he had to do something. Blue thought of all the lessons he had learned on his journey, balancing the ocean. But could these people stop? He remembered what Elder Solis had said. Do not control the ocean. Listen to him. If he could use the pearl to attract the powerful currents of the sea, maybe he could have chased the boats. He got up in the middle of the dolphin group and said, "We must work together. We will use the power of currents and waves to make people leave." Delphini watched each other, hesitating. "But Blue, they are too strong," said one of them. "I think I have to use the artifact," was thinking Blue, but when he looked at the throat, the pearl of time was not visible. And in Blue's mind a voice said, "I must deposit me in the oceanic sanctuary. Here I have no power, they cannot be used for personal purposes." Chapter 19. Salvation Plan. Blue was floating above the reef, looking down to the beauty of his world, the colorful collars, the fish that danced among the waves, the creatures that were living in peace. All were in danger. The plans thrown by the fishermen destroyed the ecosystem, and if they did not do something soon, the reef natal would have been lost forever. "We need to act now," said Blue resolutely. Around him, the reef dolphins, his childhood friends, listened to him. For her, he was also a coral, an energetic and fast dolphin, and Finn, a playful dolphin, who knew all the secrets of the ocean. "But how will we stop them? There are too many," Finn said worriedly. "We don't have to face them directly," Blue replied. "We just show them that the ocean is stronger than them." First, Blue and his friends were hiding among the corals and noticed the activity of fishermen. Their nets covered large areas of the reef. The people threw bait to attract the fish, and some smaller creatures were caught without escape. "We must move quickly," Coral said. "If there are still a few days, nothing will remain in the reef." "Then let's work together," Blue said. "We must break their plans and make them leave." Blue proposed a 3-steps plan. Distracting. A group of dolphins would create waves and attract the attention of fishermen away from the reef. The release of nets. Other dolphins and marine creatures were to cut the nets and release the captive fish. Creating a powerful current using ocean currents, dolphins could push the boats offshore, away from the reef. They all agree the ocean would fight back. Coral and a group of dolphins swim to the fishermen's boats and began to jump out of the water, making acrobatic movements. "Hey, look, dolphin!" cried one of the fishermen. The people took the rooms and forgot for a few fishing moments. It was a spectacular view, and the fishermen seemed a magical moment. Finn and a few larger fish began to pull the heavy nets, trying to undo their knots. The reef octopus used their tentacles to weaken the ties, while Blue was pushing the nets, creating holes where the fish could escape. "Faster! We don't have much time," Finn said. Blue moves quickly and used a sharp stone on the bottom of the ocean to cut the last threads that held the nets. Sometimes, one of the fishermen noticed what was happening. "Places. They break." People tried to pick them up, but it was too late. "You've escaped." Blue knew that fishermen did not like to fish in agitated waters. If they, the dolphins, could create a strong current, the boats would have removed alone. He and the other dolphins swim in rapid circles, creating an underwater world. Moves, pushing boats and raising growing waves. "What happens?" shouted one of the fishermen, trying to control the boat. The values rose, and the boats were chaotic. The peasants tried to raise their nets and start the engines, but the current was too strong. 1. They were moving away from the reef, departed in the distance. The dolphins slowed down and looked around. "I succeed!" Coral screamed, jumping from the water. "The ocean helped us, because we helped him too," Blue said. Looking at the reef that was still shining under the sun, Finn approached and touched Blue's muzzle. You became a true ocean protector. Blue delphinii fished catrackers, even the smallest creatures in the reef, gathered around them. Happy their home was saved, but Blue knew this was the first battle. He always needed protection, and he was ready to fight for him any time.